everyone again. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm Yvonne Schwab, ACG Silicon Valley CEO. Some of you might know us already, some may not. We are the leading business-to-business networking organization in Silicon Valley, providing connections, thought leadership, and enabling personal and organizational growth. We offer an array of networking opportunities, and ACG is actually a global organization with over 14,000 members in 59 chapters across the world, providing local connections with a global reach. ACG Silicon Valley is offering a variety of virtual events in the coming months. We invite you to visit our website, acgsv.org, to see the full calendar. We have our first in-person event tomorrow. I'm super excited about it. It's a happy hour at the Pullman Hotel in Redwood Shores. If you're interested in coming out and joining us, please register online and we'd love to see you there. Now, we're excited to offer you today's Young Executives Circle. And this would not have been possible without our sponsor, Bavaria Invest. Thank you so much. And I would now like to introduce you to Lena Maria Ludwig. She is a project manager and international investment and expansion for that at the Bavarian US offices. And I'll let her introduce herself a little more. So Lena.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad you took the time to take part in this little fireside chat today. We are partnering with ACGSV this year to create the Young Executive Circle that's geared towards young professionals or young at heart professionals with innovation, engineering, and corporate IP executives. And as Yvonne mentioned, I work for the Bavarian US offices. They're project manager for international investment and expansion. And originally from Bavaria, my passion and expertise is in economics, cultures, and new technologies. And that has enabled me to be a bridge for startup and corporate investment and expansion across the Atlantic, mostly in emerging fields such as digital health, aerospace, smart cities, and AI. So I'm very excited to be a part of this ACGSV chapter here, and welcome also our guest today, Tobias Strobl, Dr. Tobias Strobl. We can put him on screen now with me. Hi, Toby. It's good to have you.
Hey, Lena, thank you. Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, Toby is actually in Germany right now, so it's 2 a.m. We're happy to have him wide awake. And I would love to, let Toby introduce himself a little, and then we're just going to dive right into it. So today it's going to be about his personal story, but also shedding some light on the industry he works in, and also the industries that then corner into ACGSV. Overall, just be very positive, like an encouragement for young executives about resilience, overcoming obstacles, the international backgrounds we all share, and many of our guests today also share. So welcome, Toby.
Perfect. Thanks, Lena. Yeah, let me also give you an introduction about myself really quick. I started my professional career basically in Munich at that time with Airbus Group Innovations, working in the Department of Electric Aviation, Future of Flight. And in parallel, I did do my PhD at the Technical University of Munich, and I was accomplishing the PhD on the topics of subsystem design for electric aviation. And then after that time, I joined Munich-based consultancy, which was more in terms of like R&D organizational setup. The name of the consultancy is 3DSE, and we worked with companies, mostly corporates, in all over the world. And then after that time, I made that big pivot, getting over the pond, getting to San Francisco, and I joined Business Models Inc. It's a Dutch company originally, but also have their Silicon Valley outpost. And I was with them for about 2.5 years, and was working with them basically for like a lot of the giants in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area. So from Cisco, Amazon, Microsoft, but also then still like kind of my passion working in the aviation aerospace industry, also working on pretty cool, interesting projects in terms of eVTOLs and also the whole urban air mobility space. And then it was just in the pandemic that I eventually decided to also start my own company. And I incorporated in Germany and also in the US. And I started my company, ARIAx, which is a venture studio that co-creates and also develops and scales high potential ventures into international markets.
Wonderful. So, and every story usually has a beginning, and I actually want to go back to Toby's beginning, right, doing his PhD studies. We had a little pre-vent chat, and I thought that was very interesting and also a bit inspiring, especially being a young professional myself, where we usually don't always know where the road takes us. And for Toby, that took an interesting turn. So please share more about your PhD experience.
No, so I was actually pretty passionate in all the work, working in the lab. I really liked it. And of course, at that time, even figured it would be interesting staying in the field of electric aviation, staying with Airbus. But of course, at that time, it was pretty hard with Airbus and also like the whole program that they had to launch in terms of reduced overhead costs, which means as like a doctoral student, there was no possibility at that time to stay with an Airbus. And then I looked around and also figured, well, what could I do? What might be interesting? And then, of course, as a like with maybe like 3 or 4 years of professional experience, only in one industry in aerospace or aviation, I figured it might actually open a lot of possibilities in the future. It might be pretty interesting to do consulting and being a consultant, traveling the world for quite some time. And it was actually very interesting for me at that time, because I've also seen like insights into the automotive field, into like the truck industry, but also then even like at that time was also traveling to the US and consulting for John Deere in the Midwest, somewhere where I've never been before. But it was really interesting getting also insights into agriculture, into total different industries that I never figured before I might be interested in, also see some different things. So that was that first real pivot that I made, I would say, getting away from aerospace and also thinking what could be there beyond, what might be also interesting to look into.
Yeah, no, same experience. I actually studied in the Midwest, a place I also didn't think I was going to end up in. And that also opened the doors into, you know, kind of a different sphere of business, because business is definitely different in the US versus in Germany. And I definitely learned to, well, nurture my network. And this is how I ended up in San Francisco as well. And this is then when you really realize how many industries there are that are tech or close to tech, that are nurturing, that are interesting, that can really build your character and also build your interests out. And you mentioned you still do a little bit in aerospace, of course, a big part, but as well in ag tech and other adjunct industries, as well as mobility. So are there any revelations about the industries? You've worked in it for so long. Did anything turn out differently than you thought when you were a PhD student in Germany?
Well, I think most interesting enough, it's still, it's not, I would say it's not really bound to the industry, but it's more a total different mindset, that German mindset versus the American mindset. And I also see that a lot in my work now, working with startups in Germany, but also with a lot of ventures in the US. And it's still, it's really interesting that mindset in Germany, like it starts always with technology and basically let's build the whole product, let's do the whole prototyping and eventually bring it in the market and then sell it. But eventually, well, who will be your customers? And in the US, which is so interesting, what I really learned, it really starts with the customer and going on that exploration, on that discovery and figuring like the whole innovation process should actually be customer centric. And like for me, that was really so interesting to see. And even now, I mean, I am actually very much convinced of that the innovation should actually be triggered by what eventually the customer would pay money for. So really like the whole customer centricity, I'm a huge advocate for that, but I still have a hard time actually bringing that mindset oftentimes back into German ventures and also convincing them like whatever you do, start with the customer, start building something that people actually would be willing to pay money for. So that was like really the big thing, very industry agnostic, but even more that mindset. And I also seen that even at school, when I went to school in Germany, at the Technical University of Munich, it was really like mostly lectured like building great technology, but it was not that much of what is it that customers really want. And that was really interesting in my mind.
So you mentioned you're consulting German and US companies, startups, sometimes also scale-ups, which are high growth companies that are potentially entering a new market as well. So when you consult them, when you meet them, especially with a different mindset, would you advise them to find a big corporate that they can kind of hang on to, or that they can pitch to in order to first see what the customer wants before then going out into the field and actually asking for funding after they did some more tailored prototyping?
I mean, it's like there's really no solution that fits everyone, but in my mind, for startups, it is a good way to see if there's any strategic relationships, strategic partnerships that they might start with corporates. But in terms of like the customer discovery, customer exploration, I always tell people, get out of the building and talk to customers. Also, don't rely on any kind of quantitative surveys or so. Have qualitative interviews, talk to real people, and read in between the lines and get the real feedback. So, and of course, that's maybe like the hardest part, or like the hardest hurdle to overcome. Get out and talk to people, get that feedback. But that's what I tell them mostly in the very first place.
So that should now be even easier now that we have remote work and the potential to just have a virtual meeting anywhere at any time.
Exactly, it reduces that hurdle a little and takes away maybe like kind of that I might be shy, I do not want to talk to the people, but still I think it's really relevant that you do that in the very initial stages to really learn about your customer.
Okay, and you mentioned that you are very interested in the aerospace, especially the development, even of urban air mobility or general mobility as well. Are there any customers that, or potential customers, potential investors that startups or even corporates, when they do want to scale another product, that they sometimes overlook, or possibilities that are in each market that you benefit from, or your clients can benefit from?
I mean, that's also what I've seen. It was interesting in the pandemic. So right before it started, the entire field for eVTOLs and also the UAM field, it was pretty on vogue. I feel it kind of went a little more silent right now, and it focused a bit more into like the electric vehicle and the autonomous vehicle space, and also more like on ground mobility. But I'm also convinced that it will get back. It will get back up. But I mean, eventually, yes, it's still my passion. Everything like all those things that fly, aerospace, aviation. So that's also why I'm still looking around for ventures, also like kind of drone ventures. It's still like something where I look into, and I'm also convinced it'll get back at some point soon.
Yeah, we had we have an annual MyFest at the Bavarian US offices, which kind of celebrates one certain industry and of course a little bit of the Bavarian culture on the side. Our 2020 one was actually in urban air mobility, and we had some really interesting guests from Germany as well as the US, from Lilium, Volocopter, some from the city of LA, speaking on the potential of urban air mobility. And there's a lot happening in the space, but as you mentioned, right now there's still a lot of the conception phase. There's a lot of trials, a lot of prototyping, especially in Germany, as we mentioned. We love our prototypes, but it's definitely coming back. I'm attending a conference next month, which might also be interesting for you because it's virtual as well. It's called CoMotion LA, which focuses on mobility in cities and smart cities, and they have a free online pass, by the way. I'm not advertising this right now, but it's actually interesting because we found that many of their speakers or their partners have actually pitched or talked at our urban air mobility conference back in 2020. And it's good to see that the conversation is continuing and this industry is growing, even though it might grow small, but it just takes time. And as you mentioned, public acceptance, because it's very customer centric, but the customers are still very hesitant to step into a volocopter and go from an airport to a hotel, for example. That seems a bit too far in the future right now, I think, for the general public.
Yeah, no, that of course also was one of the things that like the acceptance has to be there, but also then what if one of those eVTOLs will fall from the sky? So there can be not like any falling down. So like there's like really zero acceptance for any accidents to happen. That's why it has to be really like double failure proof.
Yeah, and I mean that's the exact same with autonomous vehicles. Like it just takes a little bit more time and a little bit of like, you know, insurance that nothing bad is going to happen. So you mentioned ARIAx. I would love to hear a bit more about who you're working with, how the idea came to be, and also from a perspective of an entrepreneur yourself now, since you started this company, how did you start and how did you sell yourself in that sense? Because young professionals need to learn how to properly promote what we can do, how we can build a business or work in big corporates and pitch our innovative ideas. What are some tips and what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I think it really came all together by means of like the technology experience that I had before and building some kind of prototypes, technology products before at my time at Airbus, but then also the consulting experience, and especially my stint with Business Models Inc., where I learned that whole process of innovation, that like design thinking and business design process, from where you really like go from very scratch into like building a business model, going on a customer discovery, doing some prototypes, pivoting, persevering, and then like basically honing that customer feedback into your product, and like this continuous iterative process, continuous iterations, and eventually build something that really people would be willing to pay money for. So this innovation process helped me also kind of defining that even like more for an innovation process for startups. And that's also why together with my business partner, we built together our own startup consulting methodology. We call it the ARIAx Venture Development Manifesto, which is basically a process that consists of different base modules and also deep dives and complementary elements. And it really is basically built, or the fundamentals are in design thinking, and it also roots in customer centricity. But that process really helps startups to focus. And it always really starts with, and you can apply that from scratch when you start working with a venture, but also when there is already something, when you even develop them further. My very first question is always, what is your business model? What's your value proposition for what customer segment, and how will you eventually make money with that? So this golden triangle, and even then looking more in depth into the business model, especially the business model canvas, that is something I always start working with people, working with ventures, and it helps them a lot to get clarity, to get like a real clear picture what they really want to do, and not only like, okay, we have an idea, let's build something, let's build an app, and then let's sell that. Well, it's more than that, to just like basically burn quite some money and then eventually not having anyone who would pay money for that.
Yeah, I see. And I mean, this exact business modeling could also be called personal modeling, because in the end, you have to find kind of your space to be in. Could you give some advice how people can find their passion if they're still, that their career can become more linear in that? Or do you think you can rock the world without having one passion only?
Well, I think in my mind, most people have maybe like different passions, and sometimes it takes a little longer. Maybe sometimes you even don't find that biggest passion right away, but you can eventually get there. But still, I think it's always interesting to explore different pathways and not only like focusing on that one single right solution. So in my mind, it's always interesting. Also, that's what I tell most venture founders, even when they're like maybe even oftentimes a one-man or one-woman show. Find maybe like some good co-founders, find someone who also triggers you, like a sparring partner, someone to discuss to really like get along with the ideas. And that always helps. Like those strategic conversations, those strategic discussions help a lot to even expand your horizon and like getting new ideas and build off on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good advice for every young person. So for you, it was definitely aerospace, as you mentioned, because you also did your PhD in that. Was it always like a childhood dream? Were you always interested in airplanes, or how did that passion come out in you?
I think still when I remember what my parents told me, of course, when I was in kindergarten, I always said I want to be like a automotive engineer or like a Ferrari engineer. That's what I said. But well, with aerospace, it's not that far away from like Ferraris or like really high pace vehicles. Eventually bring them up into the air and also like really move still at a high pace. So, but it was always like maybe like something engineering related, I might say.
Okay, so always a little bit of an inventor and a little bit of a, in German you say Bastler, you know, just using different things together. So you work with startups mostly, you mentioned, but you've also previously worked with bigger corporates in Silicon Valley like Amazon and other really big tech companies. So what do you think can corporates do better? And what do you think startups can do better? Or where do they thrive?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of corporates, and that's what I've seen, and actually mostly outside of Silicon Valley with corporates, still like the hierarchies and also decision-making processes. But I mean, I guess it's quite obvious, and all of us know that. But that's oftentimes what I've seen a lot. Like it takes forever until any decision is made. And then even and that's maybe like even more from my perspective, when I was consulting or doing consulting work for corporates, they pay a lot for that. And eventually they take all that work, most of the times put it in a drawer, and then maybe like 5 years later, pull it out again, and maybe even pay more money for that for just another similar project. And with startups, what I figured when I consult them, and that's also in my mind why it's, for me personally, it's more fun. And also I feel it's more sustainable because one, it's also longer programs that I design, working with them longer term, and also the impact, and also what I see from the ideas that I bring in, how they build off on these ideas and also pursue. That's what I see. So for me personally, I feel like it's way more sustainable. And yeah, with corporates, it oftentimes was strategic projects for 3 months, and then if you follow up maybe after a year, I haven't seen like a lot coming out of that, unfortunately, of course.
Yeah, so the startups that you work with that are interested to work more with corporates or find their ultimate B2B customer, how do you advise them to approach these companies? Because as you mentioned, they're very busy, there's a lot of activity. How do they even find the right person to talk to? How should they go about that?
Yeah, I mean, here also, well, there's one big thing in terms, before you talk to any kind of customer, you always have to make the differentiation in between who do you want to talk to? Is it the one who uses the product? Is it the one who makes the decision to buy the product, or eventually that person who purchases the product? So this is like on a very high level. But then in terms of corporates, when you, who you talk to, I think with regards to corporates, it's actually very interesting that you don't approach them in terms of you want to sell your solution, but most of the times I advise also the startups approach the corporates by getting some feedback, discussing with them, maybe like getting some feedback on their when it comes to startups from Germany that want to enter the US market. Ask for some feedback with regards to your US go-to-market strategy or your market entry, something like that, but not eventually, okay, approach the company right away in terms of, I want to sell you my solution, what do you think? So that strategy in my mind is a bit, yeah, maybe too aggressive. So rather get feedback and then like keep the conversation going. And if there's something there, I think then the corporate might even be more leaning towards buying the solution and having like deeper discussions.
Okay, so that's like really scaling the product then when this corporate shows interest, and then you have your ultimate customer, of course. So let's kind of connect that to personal growth. So when you want to, let's say, promote yourself what do you think are important steps that you can take that you can either make a name for yourself, or when you are a young professional working in a corporate, how can you, kind of reach that point where other people take note of you and listen to your ideas? What's your experience here?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of a corporate, of course, it comes back to your credibility and also how you can really articulate and sell your solutions or proposals that you have. But maybe also oftentimes, I mean, I had that in the consultancies where I was with. You always had a more experienced mentor that you can discuss with. So you have your sparring partner. That's of course helpful. Like someone who really also takes you, or even like climbs that ladder, and that person, he, she also takes you on that journey together. So that's something, and like this mentorship that really helps, I think. And it's not only like the young people, only they have ideas. You can also learn a lot from the more experienced leaders. So it's like really give and take in my mind.
I see. Yeah, let's go back to a little bit to ARIAx and what you do. And you started with talking about the, finding your business model and kind of going into that. I mean, once a lot of the startups and also high skill companies, they've already found which business model they're going to go with. So they most likely have a pilot project. And then at some point, they're going to need money. Yes, they need the money to build more. So what are the funding mechanisms that you think are very valuable especially to the aerospace industry, either in Germany or the US or in both countries?
Yeah. So I think, and that's, I mean, I remember that we talked about that before also, Lena. What I think is pretty interesting, and also that's of course, especially in the US, it's the entire funding scheme. It's also from the government in terms of non-dilutive funding, especially in the very early stages for a startup. So maybe like even before the stages of business angels and way before any kind of VC funding. So those non-dilutive funding opportunities are pretty interesting for startups that are existent in the US. I think there's also different programs existent in Germany or also from the European Commission. But I actually like it a lot. What I've also seen, the funding programs with the US Air Force and the innovation ecosystem called AFWERX. So they have different phases where they fund startups. And like the very first phase, which I think it's pretty interesting, you already get money and quite a substantial amount of money to only go on a customer discovery and basically learn what product might be relevant for an end user within the Air Force. And I find that interesting because you really get money already, not for right away selling something or providing a solution, but it's really those very initial stages of customer exploration where you already get money. And that of course also helps you. This feedback and also these insights help you a lot to build a better product for that for that customer eventually.
In that case, does the customer discovery have to be then within the US defense industry, or is it also fine to branch out?
Well, in the first place, it would be for that defense customer that you do it, because it's also within. So in that specific case, if you would apply for a grant funding with the US Air Force, that also would be a customer exploration within that realm. But I mean, there's so many different opportunities, also all the different departments of the US government that also offer this, it's called SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research. So these programs, they're existent in almost every department within the US government. So of course, if you have, let's say, if you have a biotech product, or you want to do something in biotech or medtech, well, that might be like your first shot might not be right away Department of Defense, but then you might actually go to the US HHS, or if you're maybe like in the automotive field, you might approach the Department of Transportation. So there's so many, like there's really a variety of different fields, and all the departments offer those opportunities, which I really like. And of course, you also can get connected right away to the right department where your solution might fit in, and also where you could sell that solution to in a later stage.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Germany has, of course, similar, or Europe in general has similar programs. Of course, sometimes less focused on the defense aspect. That's very the American way as well. But yeah, even in Bavaria, just having think tanks and innovation clusters that are focused on every single industry can definitely be beneficial, because the big corporates will be a part of that, will be members, as well as younger, innovative product startups that can start a conversation. And that's exactly what you mentioned. Like, first you find your customer, you get some feedback before a sale happens, or before a collaboration, a partnership is being built. Yeah, so you mentioned aerospace mobility is really big, a big part of ARIAx. Would you like to talk about other industries that are currently very trendy in Silicon Valley, or a trend that you're seeing in Germany with your German customers?
Yeah. So what I think also, and of course that was even pandemic driven, like the entire biotech, medtech field, of course, also is getting bigger and bigger. I mean, it was ever since it was big, but also like really a lot of great things happened. And we're also working with one startup in the biotech medtech field. So it's a Spanish-based venture who has designed a collaborative platform that basically helps cancer researchers accelerating their research work and help them develop novel cancer drugs faster, bringing them faster to the market with their big data and AI-based tools and predictive models that will help de-risk the discovery and development of novel cancer drugs. So that is really like a very, very interesting project, very passionate that we're all working on ARIAx. And of course, with that big goal also, maybe like really finding novel cancer drug formulations and really doing good, and eventually bringing something or actually really like improving cancer research in this regard. So that's really passionate. And with them, we already get now into like the second year working further with them. And also there, it's a Spanish-based venture. Everything has been developed so far in Europe, but we also look, how can we even like leverage the ecosystem and different companies? How can we also, other companies we worked with before, how can we even connect them? And maybe like from some companies we work with in the artificial intelligence, machine learning field, how could that also be like a great connection for that cancer research venture to really build something bigger than only a standalone option? That's one thing. And then also, of course, since we do have an entity in Europe, but also in the US, the bigger picture would even then be, how can we also internationalize that venture and bring the venture from Europe into the US, where also, of course, venture capital and funding is even way bigger than what is available in Europe.
Yes, I just screen shared some of the companies you work with for our guests so they can get a little bit of an overview. So I think you were just talking about cancer appy, right? Was that the
yeah,
one?
exactly, cancer therapy.
Yes.
Yeah,
so they are,
that's correct.
A Spanish example that you just made. And yeah, any interesting do you remember the first company you've worked with, and what you've learned from going through the process with the first company then to now, where you have way more experience in that field?
I think one of the very first companies, it's actually top left, that is Evitado, and I'm still working with Evitado, advising them, and that was actually through the German accelerator Silicon Valley, which is now the German accelerator US. So I was their lead mentor during the Jumpstart program, and which was pretty interesting. So I helped that venture at that time, getting into the business modeling, looking into the pricing model, how that could be. And that was even like everything pre-revenue, but that company did great. And it was just recently, 2 weeks ago, that I was together with one of the co-founders, Andrew. We were together in Las Vegas on a trade show, first in-person trade show post-pandemic, which was pretty interesting. But it was really great to see, and also to see how far that venture got from their very initial prototype and like maybe not even that defined business model at that time when we started. And now they have a defined business model, prototype is ready, and even like seeing how all the people went around their booth and how interested they were in their system. So Evitado, they have a 3D, a LiDAR-based collision avoidance system, which basically helps prevent accidents of aircraft while moving aircraft on the ground or while parking an aircraft in a hangar. And it's really interesting to see how far they got in that short period of time. So that was like really that very first venture, but it's great to see even after that time they still want to work with me. So I feel like that is some kind of credibility, or that like I feel like the sustainability they see that there was progress we made, and also like the help, and still like with the intent, let's work further, and also let's help them scale into international markets, and even like grow their customer base. So all these aspects, that was pretty exciting, and I'm excited actually to still be able to work with them.
That's great. Yeah, and you mentioned scaling into international markets quite often in the past few minutes. So let's talk a little bit more about this. When you scale a US company to the European markets, that's yes, usually because they need to expand, they have customers, but just considering the ecosystem, what do you think is a big benefit of the European industries and the industry landscape and the US? And I know you mentioned the US, of course, the funding is bigger, you know, the checks are bigger, VCs are, well, more available, let's say that. So what have you witnessed so far?
Yeah, well, I think also still like in Europe, there's also great institutions, and also for US ventures, it's still interesting to kind of even see what like also the academic landscape or university research that happens there, how they also can even like build and branch out from that. So I think that's pretty interesting. And then still like the European market, especially also like the DACH market, so like the German speaking countries, it's still it is a huge market, and also there's great learnings, and even like the products might in many cases might be adapted to that market, because also like the customer requirements are different between the US market and also the German market. So it's always a process and a journey, like how can you adapt that product and really find that product market fit. And that's but I mean, it goes both ways, from Europe into the US or the other way around. So that's always like, I think, exciting to go through that journey and figuring how can I really tailor my product to the specific market needs.
And you mentioned there's a lot of, you know, collaboration as well, in the sense of academic research, R&D in general. We're part of the Silicon Valley Venture Development Program, which is from two universities. It's the Technical University of Deggendorf, which is outside of Munich, a little bit further outside, but for the guests who, it's in the south of Germany. Could you talk a little bit about this and the goals and what has been accomplished so far?
Yeah, so that program, I really like it, and it's super interesting. It's basically, as you said, Lena, it's a collaboration of Technical University or Technical Hochschule of Deggendorf together with the Santa Clara University in Silicon Valley, and it's a really interesting program which is tied to the needs of MVP and post-MVP ventures. And so I like it a lot because it also has a clear structure, or a clearly structured process in terms of very customer centric, looking into like what's your business model, let's do the competitive analysis, but everything in terms of what really matters for customers. And then also it has a clear investment focus. So getting ventures ready, basically ready to invest. So, and then also, of course, introducing them to potential investment opportunities. So all these kind of aspects, it's pretty interesting. And of course, with preparing ventures, it always starts in Bavaria, in Deggendorf, and eventually it ends up then at the campus of Santa Clara University, where they pitch. So for me, it just started again. I am now a lead mentor for the second year. Unfortunately, because of COVID, I did not, or the whole pitch of the first year was all virtual and not at the campus of Santa Clara. But hopefully next year in March, everything's going to be there in person, and we also will, because it's going to be different dynamics, and also then even the investors or potential investment opportunities and people who do have money, when they will be there, it will be pretty interesting when the ventures have the possibility to pitch in front of different investors and see how far they can get, or maybe they even get funding pretty fast. So the program, why it's so interesting, it really helps the ventures a lot. And we also heard it from last year. The venture said in this 1 year with the workshops and also that one mentoring session per month, it helps a lot to get into that mindset and not only develop technologies and then try to sell something. No, it really helps them to think about so many aspects they even haven't considered without the program. And that's a great feedback, of course, to hear as a mentor.
Yeah, and you mentioned you mentored for other programs as well before, and are open to still mentoring just in general as well. So when did you enjoy becoming a mentor? Because that's still taking, your personal time as well and putting it into younger people that are innovating new products and all kinds of industries. What made you become a mentor?
I think I started conversations pretty long time ago with the German accelerator when Michael Meyer was still the CEO or interim CEO of the German accelerator. And that was, I think, already back in 2018. Eventually then became a mentor in 2019 with the German accelerator. And I'm very happy that I did become a mentor, because I think that also kind of led me in my pathway towards starting ARIAx, because throughout the German accelerator, like that work, it was my first kind of touch point working with startups. So before it really was always corporate, or maybe like sometimes a like medium-sized company, not even a small-sized company. It was mostly corporates or medium-sized companies. And then through the German accelerator and through the mentoring work, I really got into the world and also the mindset of working like in a startup mode. And so that was really interesting, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity with the German accelerator. But yeah, as you said, so there's many different accelerators that I'm also doing some mentoring work. Also the different programs of the German entrepreneurship, also Open Austria or Advantage Austria. So it's really interesting, and I like it because even those pitch nights that they offer, you hear many creative and innovative people, many ideas, and even like giving them feedback. When you see how they receive the feedback and also what they make out of it, I think that's always the best feedback as a mentor. When you see they take the feedback, they don't even try to argue or find some rationales. They just take it and actually they consider, they reflect, and then they make something out of it. So that's always a great confirmation that maybe like the things that I say, they do make sense.
Okay, now I mean
some of them at least.
I mean, yeah, and especially with your background, and then I would probably also listen to you very closely if I was just starting out in the aerospace industry. And that's the beauty of mentoring on the business side, but also the beauty of mentoring on a personal side, because a lot of the people that come in from the German accelerator are of course German. They've just entered. They came to the US to have this beautiful pitch event. They're really interested to scaling their business in this market. You talked a little about the cultural differences that you experience in the corporate world and of how they work and with the prototyping. But what are some cultural differences that you've witnessed in Germans coming to the US or Americans coming into Germany in, let's say, communication, like cultural communication, cultural settings?
Yeah, I think, and I even experienced that with myself. Before I came to the US, I was maybe like more narrow-minded, and also even like this whole networking, that is in my mind such a US thing, and that helped me a lot to get there and to be open, building the network, expanding the network. And in the US, it's like, oh yeah, sure, I connect you with this person, or let me think even like you meet someone, oh, let me think who I can connect you with. It's again, like it's give and take. And this is something I've never before experienced in this extensity in Germany before. So in Germany, it's most like you can already be happy if you maybe like get after knowing someone really well, one intro or something. But in the US, it's always like, okay, I connect you with this person, and that's of course how you build that network, and it gets bigger and bigger. And like I've also like when you do that, there's always something coming back, and I really like that a lot, and that mindset, like way more open and like building the network, expand and expand. So that is one really huge cultural difference in my mind with regards to like communication and how you really like kind of get along with the people, and even like it's even easier, of course, getting in touch with people in this regard.
Yes, so getting in touch with people is always a big thing, as you mentioned, even just having this first conversation with a corporate about feedback or about, you know, potential collaboration. I can definitely see this as a big benefit of the US, where people are very open and also know a lot more people. I think definitely, you know, LinkedIn is a big part of that, because you hold the people closer and you can actually see what's happening. Yeah, so for a young professional going into this networking phase, trying to start off networking, let's say they move to a new city or they move to a new country completely, how do you think the best way to start your own network and also to maintain that network? What's the best way to go about that?
Yeah. So what helped me there, and that was also my learning coming to San Francisco and basically not knowing anyone. There's those apps such as Meetup or even Shaper, like a matchmaking app where you can meet like-minded people, but really like people that do want to meet up for business reasons. So not like the dating piece, but so similar like the dating apps, but really like basically business dating. So those are helpful things in my mind, especially when you come to a new city, or also when you're like at a pretty young age still and want to expand your network. But then also, of course, go to events, those events that interest you, maybe the events in, that are like kind of in the realm in the industries that you work in. These kind of things, meetups, that's really good to get there, get to know people, and then just like be open-minded and just approach people, like, because eventually they can only say no, but mostly people, especially in the US, in my mind, they're pretty open-minded, and like I think I've never really heard like a no right away. So they're always like at least open for an immediate chat.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. When I came to San Francisco, I also didn't know anybody, and I was also joining a few networking groups, which I found very interesting, because from those networking groups, you will find out about more networking groups or sub-networking groups of those networking groups. It's just a gigantic network of people that are very interested to just meet each other. And that's, I think, also the benefit of this melting pot that San Francisco is, because I don't think I know a single person that's a San Francisco native in like the business like the business industry here. Everybody came in from other places or moved back as well, especially from the young professional side. You gain a lot of friends, and you also lose a lot of friends, because people leave again after a couple of years to go on to new ventures. So I think that's kind of like a nice, I'm just looking at the time, we have about 10 minutes left. I think that's a really nice note to kind of end on, that it's always good to be open, always good to be out and about and meet people. It doesn't even have to be a business meetup. It could just be a hiking group, because then you will meet people from other industries, which is even more interesting, because then you might find or stumble upon your passion because you didn't know this product or this lab, the biotech side, even existed. So I would like to thank you so much, Toby, to be up at 2 a.m. to talk to us in the Young Executive Circle, and also maybe open up the floor in case anybody has a question for you. There's a little chat over there if you have some interest. other than that, I know Toby mentioned he's very open to offering even a lunch and learn, which is very nice of him. So Toby, you can also share something about.
Yeah, sure. So if anyone, or if you even might know someone who might be interested, maybe someone who in your network who might have business ideas or might even have a venture that at the moment is looking for some help, would be great. Please feel free to pass along my contact details. And I'm not sure if Lena, if you might share that afterwards, maybe my email or like the contact details. Please feel free to reach out. Of course, always great to get in touch with new people. I would love that. And yeah, so basically, or add me on LinkedIn. So would be great then to keep the conversation going. And if anyone has any question, feel free right away, right now, or otherwise also via LinkedIn, would be happy to get in touch.
If you're okay with it, I would post your email into the chat. Right?
Absolutely.
So we had it on a
Please do.
slide, but I think this is also quicker. So this is Toby's email. Yeah, thank you. Yvonne is back on our
Thanks so much. Yeah, and thanks a lot for the opportunity, and Lena, thanks for the great moderation. It was really great chatting. Thank you.
I've enjoyed that.
I absolutely agree. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Toby. Very interesting chat, and we will absolutely share this video with everyone who participated, and you can share that on your own channels, and your contact information can be included there as well. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact any of us. We'll be here to help you. And other than that, enjoy your evening. Get some rest, Toby. I know it's early in the morning for you.
All good.
Truly appreciative of you taking that early morning call there. And stay safe, and hope to see you all soon again.
Okay, wonderful.
Hope to see you soon in person.
Yes, please.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening, everyone.